This podcast is intended for educational purposes only and is not intended to replace therapeutic services of any kind. Please refer to the list of references provided if you need support.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Sessions with Sara Cate and Ashley. I'm Ashley.
I am Sara Cate.
We have shifted our recording time to
early morning.
And so we're enjoying a cup of coffee. So if you're listening to this, 4 shots in.
Sarah might be 6 shots of espresso in. So welcome to the Thunderdome. You have no idea what's coming at you in this episode.
But this episode is actually one that I guess, we talk about topics and we come up with things, and it's there have been some topics that we're okay, we're not ready for that one yet. It's just not the right time. And then it'll be the right time and all of that. And this is one that I think from the beginning was always a topic that was perfect timing. However, we kind of have just decided to do it. It kind of just came up. And it is the stigma of mental health. And I think that we're in a really interesting time. And I tell people this a lot. It's our generation, the older millennial generation, one of the things that I'm most proud of is that we have kind of said, and I think the younger generations have followed and maybe been a little bit louder about it, but our generation broke the mental health is just taboo. We don't talk about it. You hear a lot from the older generations about how if you show emotion, if you go to therapy, you're not, especially if you're a guy, you're not a man, and feelings are stupid and all of those things. And it's always kind of been viewed as an excuse, or it's not real, or it's you're being a cop out, or whatever it is. And so I'm just really proud of our generation and the younger generations for saying no, fuck this. We deserve to be healthy, and we deserve to be fully healthy, which isn't just our physical presence. It is everything within us, which includes mental health. And, there's so much that we can say about this topic. Sara Cate and I are not one for few words.
There's a lot in this noggin.
But I want there's just so many good things in your noggin, Sara Cate.
It's because it's a big one. All this hair hides lots of secrets. I told you it was going to be a wild ride today, guys.
So, I want to, there's been also in this very recent history, there have been a lot of celebrities, professional athletes who have started speaking out and protecting their mental health, and which has come with a lot of backlash. And so one of the stories that I want to bring attention to is Simone Biles, which if you know me, I love gymnastics, I love Simone Biles, and that I'm obsessed. And I got so protective of her. So if you don't know, in the last Olympics, she is the world's best gymnast that we have ever seen, ever in the history of the sport, and probably will be for forever. And in the last Olympics, she got what is called the twisties. If you're a gymnast, that's what they call it. It's where you literally lose. I mean, they flip, they twist, they do all these things and then land on their feet, right? So when you get this, you can't control, you can't twist, because you lose your space or your place in space. You can't tell where you are. Now, this is a little different because they're twisting very high in the air. They're trying to land on a 4-inch beam. They're trying to grab a teeny tiny bar.
Insane.
Or they're going off of a vault, or on the floor exercise where they're shot way up in the air and they're doing all of these twists. So if you get this and you cannot tell where you are in space and you land on your head, guess what? You're probably not going to make it, or you're going to be severely injured. So this is not just a I'm injured, I have a sore ankle, let's tape it up and go. This is if I don't stop, I could die or be
the
paralyzed.
Consequences are extremely high.
Yes. And so what happened was she came out and said that she was no longer competing because of her mental health. And I was extremely disappointed by not just like the people in media, because she was getting like, it depended on like where you were looking. You could find all of the support in the world for her, and you could find a lot of really cruel and nasty things said. Same thing happened to Naomi Osaka, the tennis player, when she took a mental health break. Same thing happens to so many athletes, because we have a really sick problem in this country where we view athletes as like not human beings, and we think that we own them or some stupid thing like that.
Yeah, it's fame.
Yeah.
That somehow they're working for us.
Right. And so there were a lot of people in my life that I was like shocked, being like, she's letting down her teammates. Like, she has let down all of these people. Like, all of these people are waiting to see her perform, and she's letting us all down. And if you just look at like the physical danger that she was putting herself in, that's like one thing we can all see, hopefully, that like she could have died. But to say that somebody's mental health is not important, and that your entertainment is more important than somebody's like real life experience, like, we've got a problem. We have a really big problem. And again, you can look and you can find all of the encouragement and all of like the good progress that we're making in terms of like mental health, and like having a say in going to therapy and being more accepting of people going to therapy. However, I think that there is a long way to go. And so we wanted to have this conversation to help destigmatize this nonsense around what mental health is, and like to combat people who are saying, like, people who just dismiss it, because you're nothing without your mental health. Like, nobody deserves to be on this earth and suffer. And nobody deserves to have people in their life who belittle them and diminish them to such awful standards. And so we want to provide a space of support. We want to provide our voices in, I don't know, what do you call it? Solidarity with like the movement,
and in concert with everybody else who's a part of this wave, in this progressive kind of movement of treating mental health as equally as important as physical health, as equally important as emotional health.
Yeah. I think it's so interesting too, because it's like, you know, we have never lived in a time where social media is what it is, where the internet is what it is. And so there are so many more criticisms and so many more damaging things to our psyche that we're just like constantly bombarded with, that to, first of all, just like name that and put it out there, that like it really is a struggle for a lot of people. And, you know, when you want to like look at the numbers, our younger generations, they're not doing so hot. Like, the numbers are staggering, and they're increasing in terms of self-harm, suicide,
body image issues.
Yeah. All of the things there, it's getting worse. And when we continue ourselves, so this is a challenge to anybody listening, which I feel like probably the people who are listening to us probably like are with us.
I mean, if you have found this and you do not believe that mental health is an important part of your life, thanks for being here.
Well, yeah. Here's the thing though. There are so many.
This is for you too.
Yeah. There's so many like trolls out there who like just search for plays, and they probably don't listen and just want to, you know, be mean.
We welcome you here too, trolls.
But so this is a challenge for if you are feeling that like mental health isn't that big of a deal. One, acknowledge that belief, and then see where you can find a little bit of education wherever it feels good for you. Maybe it is listening to more podcasts like this. Maybe it is picking up a book. Maybe it's you seek out a therapist for the first time in your life, because I believe that at some point in our life, we all deserve to have a therapist. Not that we need one. We all deserve to have one. And I don't think that therapy is something that, like, there are people who believe this, that you have to have a therapist and you have to have a therapist for your whole life, right? Like, we go through, and that you're going to have the therapist, you're the same therapist for your whole life. And that stuff, like, we're going to go through kind of like phases, right? Where like, we might be going through something that we need therapy every week. And maybe then it's like once a month, or then it's back to every week, like this is like a flow through life. And it's not that, it's that we deserve to have someone to talk to. And this is also a call to those who have people in their life who you hear speak about mental health on a degrading level, to try to plant some seeds. This isn't like you go up to this person and you tell them how stupid they are and you start a big argument. This is in my experience, getting professional help really helped me, blah, blah, blah. You don't have to like share your personal, vulnerabilities, but people can connect to human experience. And so this isn't about like, you have to go like share your vulnerabilities all over the place. But if we want to make this better for everyone around us, we got to speak out about it when people are diminishing it. And again, don't like, scream at them, whatever, but just say like, hey, like this podcast is really interesting. You should have a listen. Like, I really enjoyed it. Or this book really opened my eyes to this. Cause like, I once thought that, like things like that, like this is how it's like the ripple effect, right? That one little thing that you say might not completely change their mind, but it might be the thing that starts the snowball effect. And it's the same with whether you're talking about mental health, whether you're talking about basic human rights, whether you're talking about reproductive rights, whether you're talking about racism, like all of the things.
Yeah. Planning.
We have to, especially when you're in a place of privilege, we have to be willing to sometimes say the hard things, say the uncomfortable things to make it better for the people around us. So this episode is we're giving our voice to solidarity for mental health and destigmatizing it. And we're also challenging everybody who feels the same to up their game and do what we can to make it better.
Well, and I think, to Ashley's point around us coming, specifically her and I coming from a generation, we were born to the ever so interestingly named boomers. So that generation of individuals were born to parents who lived through war and a depression. And so when you live through something as intensely, like when you're facing imminent death all of the time, right? War equals death.
Yeah.
Depression, not having enough food, not having shelter, not having those things, typically there's fatalities. And so when you are living in a constant vigilant state around life and death, the nuances of emotion, of sadness, frustration, anger, you just shut them down. You shut them down because you're facing something far more terrifying, which is like, you might not have your life. And so our parents, specifically Ashley and I's, were born out of parents who experienced that. And so they were not raised mostly, again, we can't generalize everything, but a generation, the boomers, were not raised to be hyper aware of the plethora of emotions that we can experience. And also we're raised with parents experiencing post-traumatic stress. And so the depression and anxiety in their DNA, especially from even a generation before that in the depression, was pretty strong and had the imprint and carrying a lot of that dysregulation of anxiety and depression at a baseline. And then our parents, while mental health was starting, it was very Freudian, and they had to lay on a couch and talk about the pains of their childhood. And no one likes to do that. No one wants to do that, right? Like no one wants to relive the trauma that they experienced. And mental health and support services for mental health were not what they are today. the therapy has changed in a number of ways to become a more resourcing experience. For instance, with me, with my clients, since I do somatic therapy, I spend a great deal of initial sessions working to create support and resource in a client's body and in their brain before we even go towards story or narrative or traumatic thing and dig in, right? Like they have to have a degree of stability in their own system and in their own experience of like, I feel safe here. I know what safety feels like to some degree. Like we start to touch into that before we even go towards the difficult conversations, and that is built through safe relationship. That is not what a lot of therapy was early on. And so and let's also talk about how people were institutionalized for mental illness.
Right.
And that was a part of the boomer and previous generations. Women had hysterectomies because it was called hysteria.
Yeah.
And were institutionalized. People were lobotomized. They took cut out parts of their brain if they had mental illness. And so we're dealing with these very old concepts. And so if our parents were not of the persuasion to get help, get support, understand, just because of lack of education, lack of access, or, lack of desire to some degree, us speaking out about this now to them is going to be an affront. Like that we're, of course, the Gen Zers and the millennials, we're sensitive and we're all of these things, when in actuality, we're just deciding that, no, I get to have the range of emotional experience that I am feeling. And the way that therapy can support that is help create a regulated experience within the intensity of our emotions. Like it creates, let me rephrase that. It creates a supportive experience for the intensity of our emotions.
Lovely.
And so what therapy and mental health is now is not what previous generations understand it to be. Yes. And of course there are the anomalies, right? Like I work with clinicians who are in their 70s. One of my best friends is a retired psychotherapist, and she's in the somatic world, but she is ahead of her time when it comes to all of that, because she decided to educate herself and learn new techniques and stay involved in the evolution of mental health and wellness.
Well, that just speaks to a willingness to continually grow and learn and change and be part of solutions rather than stay on the other side of the line where you just where there's a refusal almost. There's a refusal to grow sometimes. And so,
and it's fear.
Yeah, of course, right? The refusal to grow often comes from fear or anxiety or like the future is unknown, right? Like, so the refusal to, and that, like that, yes, that comes from so many different things. But like what she's saying is like, there are the way that we can access mental health. And now this is not the same across all cultures, unfortunately, but the movement towards this shift is what's important, and helping people get access to this shift, helping people get the education. That's what's important.
Well, and like, so that to your point, so that we're not judging people, unfortunately, I have so many clients report to me that, people in their lives do not take their mental concerns and dysregulations and pain as real, because it's not like a bruise on your skin. You can't see it. And so, when someone has a panic attack or an anxiety attack and someone's just like, well, I don't like, what do you mean anxiety? Like, what do you mean panic attack? They don't understand that it actually impairs a person's ability to complete simple tasks in their own life. And until someone experiences that, until it impacts them personally, oftentimes they don't believe it. Right. And so like, for instance, I have a client who needed to take a leave of absence after living through a near-death experience, domestic violence situation with a partner, and tried to get leave covered, and short-term disability wouldn't cover it because of the fact that they couldn't see. Like if she had had some sort of physical expression of this agony and complete and utter terror that she experienced, it would have been a different story. But because there's no physical evidence of this, they are not going to cover it. And the anger that exists in my body around this for so many people who have, and this is a trigger warning to some, this conversation, we're going to get into the reasons, because I do believe with Simone Biles, did she work with Larry Nassar? She was one of Larry Nassar's, she's a survivor of sexual abuse. And the amount of depression and anxiety that exists in someone's body after being physically and sexually violated by an adult and someone in a position of power is extreme. And so any of my clients, I work with women and non-binary folks. And so the amount of people that I work with who have been sexually violated, sexually abused, have had non-consensual experiences with their bodies is almost 90%. And so those violations are not often visible. And what has happened to their nervous systems because of that is not visible. And people are walking around with this every day, all day: spiritual abuse, religious abuse, mental abuse, verbal abuse. Those things are not worn on our skin. They are worn in our bodies. Let me be very clear. They are worn in our tissues and our muscles. We can feel them, we experience them. They're in our bones, but it is not visible all of the time. And so to say that Simone Biles was just taking care of her mental health because of the physical symptomologies that were coming up is a lukewarm way to say she was actually trying to heal one of the deepest, most impactful abuses that you can endure as a human being, especially at such an impressionable age. And anyone who's been sexually abused by an adult, a caregiver at a young age, carries such a degree of pain and trauma. Potentially. I don't want to speak for everyone. Some people maybe are still working through that. But if you have, this conversation is for you to support you in accessing any of the services that you might need. We have a list of resources in our show notes, but Simone Biles was out there to protect herself in all of the ways in the choice that she made. And to have anyone argue with that personal choice, is unfortunately a part of some of the problem, to say that she can't protect herself when she was so unprotected, and that's what she's trying to do here. And so seeking out mental health services, physical mental health services, psycho-emotional, somatic, all of the above, PT, everything that is supposed to support your body, your being, your brain, your nervous system, is you choosing a layer of protection for yourself that you maybe have not had. Don't view it as there's something I shouldn't say don't. You might view it as something, as therapy is acknowledging something is wrong with you. And that is not what therapy is anymore. Or it really isn't stereotyped. It's stereotyped to be something's wrong with you, mental illness, mental disorder. That's what we call it. So we make it stigmatized. We make it, this negative thing. There's something broken. You need to go be fixed. And really what it is seeking protection, seeking support, seeking love, seeking care for things that have never been cared for pains that have never been supported. Being a therapist, it is my job to give unconditional, positive regard to every single one of my clients. And I fight day in and day out to do that, to acknowledge and honor the hurts and the betrayals and the pain that my clients come in with. I sit with the most intense, horrific sides of humanity every day in what my clients report out to me and what they've endured. And it is the honor of my life to sit there and say, you are valid. And it is justified that you have this anger, this pain, this fear, this self-loathing, whatever it might be, this shame. You have it because of what you've endured, and what you endured wasn't okay.
Yeah.
And so there are going to be issues and dysregulations and discomfort from what you lived and what you experienced. And we get to take care of that now. And that's what Simone Biles was doing. She was trying to take care of so many different pains, likely, that she had endured.
Yeah. I think, one of the things that I was going to say that like all medical professionals but it's just humans in general. One of the best things we can do, and one of the immediate ways to change how humanity itself is formed and transformed, is just to believe people, to believe their experience, right? Because there is a sense when you say things, and we're using this example of this professional athlete who's like out on the world's largest stage. It's like the friggin' Olympics, right? She's supposed to throw around her body for us to win a competition, or for us to watch her do all of these incredible, amazing things. And same for like any athlete or any celebrity, anybody who speaks out. It's like, well, you're rich, right? So like, why do you have problems? It's like, if we just remember that we're all human beings, and that our experience is our experience, and their experience is their experience. And we all deserve to have our experiences believed, that like, this is what I'm living. And I don't have to explain to you why I'm feeling this way. This is my experience, and this is what I'm feeling. If we just, as a human species, just believed people's experiences, because we don't know because we're never fully in that position. If I break my arm and Sara Cate breaks her arm, knock on wood, because the two of us, I shouldn't have said that example.
Bodily injury and us are like peas in a pod.
Oh, okay.
Great.
Well, listen,
The drive home
is walking to the car is an experience. But anyways, we're still going to have two very different experiences in that. Like, yes, same thing, very, very different. And, I don't know unless we continue to be of support, unless we continue to be of resource to the people who are struggling to find that resource. And again, like, we have all of the things listed. You can reach out to us for help. We will help you find someone, whatever it is. But the more that we can bring people into this fight, the more that we can bring people into this space of like, you never know when, if it's your coworker who says like, oh, I just had a really hard night, right? Like, maybe they're like tired. You're like, what's going on? You seem quiet today. Oh, I just had a really hard night. I'm really tired, right? You don't know, just by offering like oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Let me know. Let me know if you need to talk. Like, that must be really hard to not get sleep and then have to come to work. Like, you never know when that validation is going to be the thing that allows them to then take their health seriously, right? And do something about it, because we need support around these things, just like the physical injuries. Like, it's so easy to see if you have a cut to put a Band-Aid on it, right? If it's like gaping open, right? Like, you got to cover it up. And it's so easy to see that like you need a bandage, right? Those internal wounds deserve a bandage too.
So totally. It's like the conversation of like, insurance will cover PT, but insurance, like PT for a car accident, let's say, but the insurance won't cover mental health services for the debilitating panic attacks and chronic anxiety that my clients endure when they get back in a car.
Yeah. Totally.
You know, like
Yeah.
it just,
yeah.
it's mind boggling.
I used to work, my very first PT job outside of, or after PT school, was in a clinic who saw a lot of workman's comp injuries. And this is still in school. In school, I was taught that like workman's comp is just a bunch of people trying to get money. Reality.
Oh, that's really
disgusting. Yeah. Like that's just, you're like, yeah. A lot of people are trying to like, you know,
Jill, this is
cheat the system, blah, blah, blah. In reality, unfortunately, the people who get hurt on job sites are usually, the job site is more physical. That's not funny, but I am laughing because I had this one dentist who was like kind of like me and like tripped over their cords like 3 times in the time that I worked.
that would be me.
She'd come in and she'd be like, Ashley, I tripped again. Help my shoulder.
Ow, my shoulder.
Right. But a dentist, there's overuse injury, right? From like looking down all the time. But these like traumatic big time injuries often happen at job sites where it's more physical labor. More physical labor jobs tend to be lower socioeconomic status. That's just what our world is, right? And so these people who would get hurt, when they don't work, their family doesn't eat, or they can't pay the rent, or they have to figure out like there's 66% of what they're getting paid while they're out. They're trying to get back to work with a torn rotator cuff or right after surgery to be like, I got to get back to work. I can't take this. Like my family needs more money.
Or they're not getting that money up front. And so they're going without for,
Right. That's really what workman's comp is. And there was one, I mean, bless, he's retired now, but he was like the most amazing neuropsychologist who I tried to send every patient that I got to him, because when your livelihood is threatened, to say that there's not an impact, to tell that person that there's not an impact and that they don't deserve, they can have their whatever 8 PT visits, some stupid crap like that. To say that that's all that they need to get better and to get back to work, and then to go back to the same place where they were hurt and be on that same job site, that's bananas to think about, that they wouldn't need care for the rest of them. And to turn people into these little pawns of like, you're just here to do this work, to be quiet and go home at the end of the day, and to not care about who they are as a person, who they are as a human first. Like that's what we're saying when we do this. Like we're saying that like, no, it's only your body that is of service to me. Everything else, I don't care about. So like, no, you don't need to go see this person who's going to help you. Like Sara Cate said, get back in the car. Like they were on a delivery and they got into a car crash, or they're like at a job site and a machine smashes their arm. Like to say like, no, go back. Everything's going to be totally fine. That is the wildest version of just blatant disrespect and like just not caring about people in general.
We're not treating the whole person.
Right.
You know, and I think when Ashley and I sit here and have this conversation about mental health, it's a conversation about like recognizing, especially because she's a physical therapist, a doctor of physical therapy. I just always like to say that you're a doctor. And I do somatic therapy, and I practice somatic therapy and facilitate that. And so we're very much aware of the physical body. We recognize its importance in relationship to our brains and our beings. Like it is the holistic nature of caring for our physical body, our mind, and our emotional spirit well-being, you know, is really seeing the complete person. And that, you know, I think for both of us, and I know this because obviously I've been on Ashley's table, like I know that she treats in a way that is about the complete person that's in front of her, the human, the experience of that person. And so, you know, my encouragement to you, because I've had a lot of people find me where they're done with talk therapy. And like I've always said, talk therapy has a place, CBT has a place, DBT has a place. There's so many talk therapies that are really important and really, really, really valuable and has a lot of efficacy for certain situations. And there are a lot of people who have done the talk therapy and they're not still feeling different. And that is where somatic work, working with the physical body, starts to change that. We enter into a different conversation with the mind and the body. And so when we say mental health services, they don't have to look the way that they've looked historically.
Totally.
You don't have to just go to somebody who's going to ask you your life story, or just say, I mean, I can't tell you how many clients go, they just say to me, and how does that make you feel? And how does that make you feel? And when you have not been given language to understand your feelings and your emotions, that can feel really, what's the word I'm looking for? Very narrow and very unhelpful. So I can recognize where the mental health support services is missing. There's a miss in it. We're missing the mark to some degree. And my encouragement is to get out there and find clinicians, find facilitators, find practitioners that work for you, that align with you, because what Ashley's going to need for that part of her being is not going to be what I'm going to need for that part of my being. Everybody, you are dynamic in what your needs are and who your practitioners need to be. I met a woman who recently, and I'll link her information. She is a trauma breathwork facilitator. And she's incredible. And she herself was a professional athlete and got injured and found breath work to get through not only the pain of that injury physically, but the loss of her identity as a professional athlete, and they really essentially ousted her from the community once she was no longer, to Ashley's point, of service to them. Right. And so her individual identity then was lost, which is a huge trauma to our psyche, our being, to lose everything we've ever worked for in our lifetime and to have to completely reorganize. That's why people have midlife crises, right? Which is so fucking stupid, but it's to label it as like one midlife crisis that we have. No, we become different people. Our identities change. And then we have to completely renegotiate who the hell we are in the world when our identities change. And when that was not a choice, it is going to be far more painful. So, the services out there, so like I was saying, I brought her up just to say that she facilitates in a different way than I do even, but she really understands professional athletes and understands what the traumas that are going on in their body and be able to speak to that. So finding your entry point into your own resources and your own services, and you can dip your toe in, right? Like even listening to this podcast is a way to kind of enhance and widen your understanding of the world of mental wellness, mental health, physical wellness and health, all of the things. And so there are ways to do that. There are books, I can name 16, right, that talk about that are revolutionizing the way that we think about, I hate saying mental health because it's so much more than mental health, but it's such that just constricts the whole concept. But, just know that there are a multitude of ways for you to find support. And we are between Ashley and I, we have so many different resources. So please don't hesitate. If you have any interest in just even dipping your toe in, reach out to us and we can help facilitate that for you, because it really, you have to start somewhere. And even just a curiosity, you don't have to dive full on into weekly therapy and whatever it might be, but just start to give yourself opportunity to evolve how you need to and to find support, because this is what I tell my clients. It is hard to do the work, and yet it's hard to live what you're living right now. Yeah. Likely. It's probably painful to do what you've always done to some degree. If it's not working for you, if your life is not working for you, if feeling the way that you're feeling is not working for you, there are options. There are support services out there that can help facilitate a different experience for your body, for your being, for your brain, all of it. Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
We're passionate about this.
Yes.
I mean, we're passionate about everything we talk about.
Yeah. But I think, you can hear it in our voices, especially when, there's a lot that goes on in the medical field that just diminishes this side. And I think, we're both in this space of helping humans be their best selves. And when we see the damage that is caused by the misconceptions, I see a lot of damage caused by medical professionals in my space, because they just don't believe the experience. And especially if you are in a body that has a vulva and a uterus and ovaries, like there's a lot of damage that can be done by not believing somebody's lived experience. And so I can't like tell you how many times I've had to sit and listen to people tell me their stories of what they were told about what they were feeling in their own body, which then it just makes you question everything. It just tells you to shut those things off even more. And a holistic doctor is not one that just sits and listens to you for 5 minutes. Because that's what then the big push was too, is like, okay, well, we're holistic and we're going to treat everything. And so we're going to listen to you for 5 minutes, but then we're still going to just tell you to take, this pill or whatever. We're not going to ask you what you think, what you're wanting, what you're needing. We're just going to throw these things at you that further sometimes create the separation and really connecting into what is going on with inside that you can't see on the outside. And so if you are a medical professional, I have the same challenge to you of look at your policies, look at your company's policies, especially if you work at a big corporation. What are their policies? How are they supporting these things that you don't see on the outside? Like the sick leave, the disability leave, like what Sara Cate was talking about earlier, like be one of the agents of change in this world that like so desperately needs it. And so, like always, we want you to take care of yourself. We want you to have curiosity and compassion. And we want you to remember that, like Sara Cate said, reach out. We have so many resources and we're all going to need something different. That's kind of the exciting thing, is that like on this journey, you find out what really works. And yes, the work is hard. Yes. But it's also hard to suffer. And you don't have to.
And you get to choose what's hard then.
Yeah.
Like there's agency in you choosing to do the hard work rather than life just being hard and you being, just experiencing it being hard.
Yeah, totally.
Woo!
So
reach out. As always,
let us know.
What resonates, take it. What doesn't, leave it. And please subscribe, follow. Send this to somebody you feel like this could be really useful for. But also be kind. Don't be like, you need to listen to this because you should do therapy. Might not be the way in. And you can always just drop those little hints. Hey, this podcast totally kind of create a different conversation about mental health.
Yeah. Ask
nice little chat.
This is the thing, you can always, any of these hard topics, you can say hey, this book or read this passage or listen to this podcast. I would love to know your thoughts so that there's interaction after, not just hey, listen to this, end of conversation.
Curiosity.
Bring up the conversation. Okay. Well, we will
see you next time.
Next time. Bye.